Thank you so much for all the attendees who are joining us today. I'm Shivani. I lead business for India for MoEngage. And I think we just finished an amazing session by Ashwin on product-led growth. And I think an obvious follow-up question to that is, hey, growth is also a KPI by growth and marketing teams, right? So this session is exactly about addressing that particular question as to how do you collaborate between product, marketing, and growth to drive success. And you are to drive collaborate between these functions to solve for your KPIs, right? And we are joined by an amazing panelist speaker lineup for the panel here. I'll do a quick introduction for these guys here, starting with Anjan, a tech geek, with a passion to build products ground up. I think what he says is that, challenging work makes him wake up in the morning, right? So Anjan right now is heading growth and product for Healthify Me and has been instrumental in company's growth trajectory. So Anjan, just over to you if you want to introduce yourself a bit.
Hey, thanks for having me here. I've been with Healthify for the last 4 years. It's been an interesting journey. It's been the journey from 1 million users to about close to 20 million users now. We are not just an Indian app anymore. We are also an international app, play in Southeast Asia majorly. And we also went from just a coaching services app to an AI-led app. 2/3 of our customers are all AI customers. So more about that later in this conversation. But thanks a lot for having me here, Shivangi.
Absolutely welcome, Anjan. Next up, we have Shivangi. We share a common name here. She is, again, one of the other passionate product leaders. I think she's been part of Swiggy's growth journey when the company itself grew 30x, right? So we used to hear 1.5 million orders a month to 1.5 million orders a day, right? So that's been your experience with one of the largest growing startups out there, and currently she leads new initiatives at the firm. Over to you, Shivangi.
Hi. So yeah, I had a startup before I joined Swiggy. Then I was at Swiggy. It was like a really beautiful stint. And then for a year, I was also leading product at Khatabook. And then I came back to Swiggy to lead the business and product for the new initiatives. So we are looking whatever new other than the food offerings that we come up is the team that delivers it.
Thank you so much for joining us here, Shivangi. Good to have you here. Next up, we have Nikhil. Nikhil is, I think one of the key go-to persons to know more about building 0 to 1 products, because he's been one of those serial product entrepreneurs, I would put it that way, right? So currently, he's heading product for one of the leading bike taxi aggregators out there, which is Rapido. So good to have you, Nikhil. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Shivangi, for the introduction. Guys, so I have been working in Rapido for the last 2.5 years, where, again, as Shivangi said, 0 to 1, that journey, I have seen it in multiple startups, taken startups from 0 to 1, had 2 stints of my own startups, and one got acquired, one we sold, and then post that joined Rapido, where we scaled from 15,000 orders in a day to 450,000 orders in a day. And this COVID happened, and now this helped us to shift our gears. Yeah, we have been seeing so many twists and turns in our journey right now. But at the end of the day, we'll be there.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you so much for joining us again. Lastly, we have Lijo here. What do I say? I think he's built and scaled products across verticals: fintech, health tech, edtech, e-commerce, B2B, you name it. And I think he's been there himself, like one of the first product managers in some of these firms as well, right? So he is currently presiding product management at the edtech unicorn that we all know today of, that is Byju's. We're so lucky to have him here. Thanks, Lijo, for joining and sharing your learnings with us. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Shivangi, for the introduction. Hey, everyone. Currently, I'm handling Byju's classes, which is one of the products of Byju's. We have grown from 0 to 6 digits, mid 6 digits over the last 4 months. So it has been going on really well. Prior to this, I was with Paytm for last 4 years, where we worked on a product called Paytm Money, built it from scratch to the largest mutual fund platform in India. Prior to which I was with Practo, where when Practo was really small, which had raised Series A, saw the growth from 0 to 20 million users over the 3 years where I was involved in. So pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Without further ado, I think we should get rolling. And before we get started, for our audience here, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A section or the chat section. We'll be picking up some of these towards the end of the session, right? So, coming up, to the first very obvious question, right? So, how important is collaborating between these functions, right? So, there is growth, there is product, there is marketing. Like, what are some of the areas wherein you collaborate? How do you eliminate friction between the teams as well while collaborating? We can have a conversation, or we can have, probably Nikhil start.
Sure. So I'm assuming that most of the people who joined today have seen Silicon Valley season. I'm assuming as from everyone. So what is the that is a classic example of why the startup failed by not having collaboration among themselves. So they're mostly focused on their personal agendas in the startup, and lack of collaboration led to the shutdown of startup at the end of the day. So if you see, even in Rapido, right? So when I joined Rapido, we were very small and everyone used to do everything. Product, operations, marketing, even support calls. Every product manager, every tech person, every engineer, every founder used to do that. So, but at the end of the day, when you grow, people will grow in the company, and at the same time, while people are growing, if you don't focus on collaboration, you can't grow beyond some point. So, where let's say recently Rapido launched a TVC, but let's say if that is only owned by marketing team and it is not taken care by anyone else, we won't be able to push the ads or create brand awareness among people who are already using the app. So how do we collaborate right from day one, since the ideation phase, that we want to build our brand name, say that we are already there in 100 plus cities, we are doing so many rides, you can use Rapido for multiple things. So how do we if we don't do communication right from day one, right, so things will be very difficult for you to make success. So another simple example, right, when you have your own KPIs of growth, how do you can't do it alone. So you need help of your marketing team to sell the products that you're building. They need to put you everywhere. They need to tell customers कि यार यहाँ पे Rapido ने new service release किया है. Without them, and they are the right people, I would say, than product managers who are continuously talking to the customers. They know the personas much better than product managers. So unless and until they take the information of personas from the marketing team or growth teams, it will be very difficult for product team to build any personalized products for their audience. So I would say collaboration should be there from right day one when teams are growing. When you are the person who is doing everything, then there is no problem.
Understood. I think, we can have others pitch in as well. Like, what is your take on this?
Right. So I think I'll just take a Swiggy example here. So in Swiggy, we all run totally on collaboration, just to paint a picture of how complicated it is. So if you take Uber, right, it's a two-way marketplace. You have your customers on one side and your drivers on one, and you're just connecting them. Now Swiggy is a three-way marketplace. Now everything is on the move. There's a customer who's hungry coming onto the platform, and they're discount seekers. They want offers. There are hundreds of expectations. Then there's a restaurant which has its own issues of the menu, live inventory. We have to deliver things in 30 minutes. There's a prep time and all those things happening there. And then there is a delivery partner. We have to locate the nearest one, figure out how to deliver it so that we don't incur losses, and how do we deliver an order in a profitable way. Now, whenever you take any problem statement, the moment you go deep in it, it becomes like 100x complicated, because there are too many moving variables. So we do run on collaboration. It's very difficult to conceive any idea in a silo. So any product, first of all, it's impossible to conceive any product in silo in Swiggy, because so many moving parts. And even if you were if you did not talk to people enough, it's bound to fail. And when the org is right, you cannot just rely on the good intent of people to, assume that they'll collaborate. You have to set up some process to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So we have taken a leaf out of the book of Amazon. And I think it's a very good way, once you've crossed a level of say 120, 300 people to adopt, and we call it PR FAQs. So it's like press release, frequently asked questions. So you, on the day when you conceive the product, or when you're trying to put engineering behind it, and you have to actually put something into action, you write a PR on the day as it will go if the product was released. So as a product manager is supposed to write a PR. And it's not obviously the external PR. The external PR is written by your media team towards the end of the release, but something saying that, okay, I'm making this product. It addresses the users out there, saying this is what the value add will be for you. A good thing, it also has a date. So now that's a timeline to chase for the engineering team. So you say that I'll release this product on March 10, Bangalore. Also again, it also captures the GTM plan. No, Swiggy is all over the country. Where do you want to release the product? So you write March 10, Bangalore, and this is what we'll release. And you put in some customer codes. Now that solves for your problem statement that you're solving. So that PR FAQ, and then and obviously the internal PR FAQ has more details than the final external one, but it's a very good place to bring all the teams together. Now this is where you talk to your marketing team. Okay, this is a product I'm making. Now this is what you go and say out to the customer. So if you're saying something to the customer which does not make sense, it's not a real problem, you know that you are not solving for a real problem, or the vice versa, that you made a product but your marquee feature is not being marketed. So that's where we collaborate really well with the marketing team and also other functions, be it engineering, people who have to do ops capacity planning, people who have to actually go figure out and supply or all these things in the city that we're about to launch, right? So yeah, I think PRFEQ is a very good tool that we found, and we have used it pretty much really well in the last 2 to 3 years, I would say.
Awesome. Anjan, Lijo?
Yeah, so I think what Shivangi covered is probably very similar to what we do, but to just take a step back, at Healthify, product is probably at the center of the org, and then there is marketing before product, and there's operations after. So marketing does the job of getting the right kind of users. The scaling is done by them, ensuring that the right kind of organic, split between organic and inorganic stays constant or increases over the next few months. That's the kind of strategy that they lay out, followed by product, where product is responsible for retention, monetization, etc. And then after that, after monetization is when the ops teams come in, because we have nutritionists and fitness trainers who kind of train our premium clients. So these are the three teams, but product sits at the center. So users have to pass through product to go into operations, right? So that's how it works. So for us, I think the common thread that holds us together, because it's slightly it's not as complex as Swiggy for sure, but it's slightly complex in terms of just understanding based on user behavior. How many people are going to be monetized today? How many people are coming in today based on what marketing is saying? The common thread is actually trust, I would say. It's the only immeasurable property that we have, because everything else is measured through KPIs, but trust is the only immeasurable property. So what happens is that to make sure that we build trust between the teams, no matter whether it's in India, whether it's in the AI business, the coaching business, whether it's in Malaysia, Singapore, America, it doesn't matter. But all these teams have one thing in common, where the primary KPIs of the teams are not held by the team alone. I know it brings down accountability a little bit. But then, for example, our services team, their primary KPI is actually NPS. You just need a higher NPS, because then, renewals will follow and people talk about the product a lot more, right? But that NPS metric is not held by our services team. It's actually held by services and products. So a lot of our lag indicators are shared indicators, because we are held equally accountable. For example, marketing does its job of getting in enough number of organic users, etc. One of their lag indicators is obviously payback periods. How soon am I going to get back the money that I spent? And that's held by product too. So I think in general, it's in line with what Nikhil and Shivangi said. It's impossible to work in silos. So irrespective of what happens, because of the way our outcome-oriented focus is on KPIs, and KPIs are shared, collaboration happens by itself and trust happens by itself. So that's just throwing more light on what happens internally. But yeah.
Absolutely. I think things are really agile. There is no way out, but collaborating is what I've heard from guys. Lijo, I think your take on this, as well as highlighting a bit more on the friction side of it, right? So,
correct.
like,
see, I believe, I've been working in startups since 2007. So I believe startup is a team game. And one of the reasons why growth came into focus over the last 6 years is because marketing was not able to articulate the requirements very clearly to the engineer. So there was no common language with the traditional marketers and the engineering team. That's why the growth teams came into focus. When we look at it, the product, the friction start when each of these teams try to get into each other territory. So see, the product owns the core value that goes out to users. The growth team owns the acquisition and activation, and product owns the retention, and marketing owns the top of the funnel, which is like acquisition. That's the way most of the companies are functioning. And as long as each of these teams will be having the veto power over what other teams can vote on. So fundamentally, as Nikhil said, product is the center of everything because product controls engineering resources, and product controls and works very closely with engineering and designs, which decide what exactly will go out, and that is the source of lot of friction. But if you define the outcome metrics very clearly, when I say outcome metrics, since it is a team game, if it is like a football game, if you're not scoring the goal, you win, even if you've got all the stellar players in the field. So if you define the outcome metrics very clearly, and you check on it every quarter, and you as product and growth teams, if you're able to define that complete funnel, then it becomes much more easy. So in Byju's, that is what we have been doing. Prior to that, in in Paytm also, that is something that we tried doing, where the metrics is available to everybody to see on what exactly each of these functions are, influencing. And when we are doing certain things, how certain items based on the prioritization that product put in, how the metrics will move. So it's imperative that you define the outcome metrics for all these teams and make it as a common KPI for all the three teams together. Then it becomes a team game and there won't be frictions between different teams.
Absolutely. I think that drives a bit of structure to the entire process as well, right? So it's more smoother in terms of progressing together, right? So I think one of the other follow-up questions that I have to that, Lijo, is that, when you define these outcome metrics and these common goal to work towards, right? So what are the functions that you end up interacting with the most, right? What is the frequency of interacting with these functions? And do you need to set up, a set of expectations and milestones as well for the functions to collaborate towards that particular common goal, right? So how do you sort of divide that ownership as well?
So if you are building a product from 0 to 1, it depends upon what is the current benchmark in the market. For example, so I'm sure that everybody would have gone through a KYC process when you invest in mutual fund, equity, etc. In fact, when we started with Paytm Money, we went out to some of the leading providers out there and asked what is their KYC throughput. So they said that, see, out of the 100 people who start with KYC, only 4 people end up finally investing. So that's like, so 96 people drop out. For a product manager, that is such a delightful thing to hear because there are so many things to improve. So and especially for the growth people as well. So, so when we finally came out with our product, this 4 became almost like 7 or 8x. So, so if you are able to marshal your entire troops, like growth has to get the right kind of marketing has to get the right kind of users, which helps in ensuring that they go through the complete funnel and they are able to increase this number from say 4 to 40 or whatever is possible, which we finally achieve. The growth has to look at the right channels where these users will be coming from and ensure that these guys are going through the entire journey without any friction. So if you define that, that is what I mean when I said earlier that there has to be an outcome metrics. So when the outcome metrics is that, see, the number of people who are going through this in the best product that is available out here is currently 4, we have to make it 40. Then everybody will work towards that outcome metrics. So when you have outcome metrics clearly defined like that, there will be less friction. Obviously, there will be some friction. It is unlikely that if you are a fast-growing organization, there won't be friction between all these 3 teams. But when the outcome is fine, you at the end of it, you win the match like a team, and it's not individual glory. So if you're able to do that, then there will be less friction out there. But in addition to all these things, to answer your question, elaborate it further, if you're working in a regulated environment, so I think none of the other panelists are from regulated environment. If you're working in a regulated environment, it becomes extremely difficult. You may want to do a lot of things as product growth and marketing, but then the regulators out there would say, sorry, boss, you can't do all this.
Nikhil immediately conquered. So over to you, Nikhil. What are your thoughts on this?
So first point, so Rapido is also a regulated market, right? So we have to deal with the regulations that government puts on who can be the drivers, who cannot be drivers and stuff. So, and it changes from every state to state, right? So, and coming to the collaboration piece, simple example. So, NPS is a KPI for a company or a product team. It can't be owned by only product team, right? So, for let's say for Rapido, if you are talking about NPS, uh, we see NPS in different pieces. We break it down. Let's say, how good are we in giving drivers to them? How good are drivers with the customers? Are we giving them the price at which they are looking at? Are we fulfilling the promise that we are doing to them in terms of ETAs? So if one product manager cannot own end to end, so now this is further broken down into different teams. ETA, now ETA is completely driven by two people. One, it can be a data product team member, data product manager who owns on how do we move the supply across the city, existing supply across the city, so that I can fulfill my customers' request at all the time in less than 2 minutes, where I have to move my supply, and at the same time, the other side of the coin for the supply is increasing the supply at the same time. One is utilizing the supply optimally, and the other one is increasing the supply. Now, this has to be collaborative between supply teams and the product manager who is working together on supply, on increasing supply and optimizing the supply. If things go out of the hand, gone for a toss. And again, uh, the experience piece, right? So let's say if captains are misbehaving with the customers, or captains are not giving right experience to the customers, at the end of the day, the experience team who is looking at, they will try to eliminate that captain from the team, from the supply piece. Now they are suspending him, they're taking actions on it. Indirectly, it is affecting the supply that which I need to fulfill the orders. So again, if these two people are not working together, again, things go for a toss. So now,
Right.
it's like moving one, it's like a web, right? You can't change anything in the web, or move anything in the web, any node in the web, without moving other things. It's like a spider web.
Yeah.
So this is how we collaborate. And coming to the friction, how do we eliminate the friction? I say healthy friction is important for every company. Otherwise, there won't be any challenges. There won't be any good products coming outside unless and until there is little bit of good friction. Zero friction is always bad for a company. So I vote for friction. There should be some friction.
Absolutely. Problems call for solutions, right? So, Shivangi, what do you think? Like, how do you divide ownership between teams, and if there are any expectations or milestones that are your favorites to follow through?
Yeah, so we always try to like do some kind of structure, and it depends from problem to problem. So for example, the very simple one would be like, when you define a success metric, you always have like a check metric. And it happens that you say, like, for example, if I'm making a change, say in discounts, okay, suppose my goal is to increase the revenue per order. Okay, somebody tells me, my CEO tells me increase the revenue per order. I say, okay, I'll reduce a discount for some segmentation. So we do a lot of segmentation also, by the way. So there's like so many n cross also like lots of matrices across persona of the user, like what is easy, a discount hunter, are they a regular customer, power user, context, are they ordering a snack, are they ordering a breakfast, and also the value, what is the lifetime value of the user. So we would want to retain our priority one users and not care so much about discount hunters who are not loyal to the platform and would move to Zomato any moment they give more discounts, right? So keeping all these variables in consideration, we come up with something, and then we define that this is what the success look like. And we also say that, okay, this is my success metric, I'm going to reduce discount, but it is going to reduce NPS, which is suppose owned by, say, a CX team. Then I say that this is increasing my revenue by 2 rupees per order, maybe, but also decreasing my NPS by 4 points. So the other team has to say that, okay, we are okay with this. And then there are always these points when as a company, we have to decide that if we go here, something else will drop. So these are the hard questions that we ask our leadership also. So this is where the strategy meetings happen. And this is where we all come together and say, okay, this is a common goal we want to reach. And there'll be some, some check metrics we have to sort of let go of. So there's always a benchmark, but I should not do anything which would say, push down NPS by say more than 4 points. So I'll be like, okay, this is a check metric. This is where I'm responsible. I promise the other team, okay, I'll make my changes, but I'll not let you get affected beyond this point. If it goes beyond that, then we'll make some correction. Otherwise, you'll have to sign off and say that, okay, as a company, we're okay taking this call. So we have to take a lot of these calls like almost every day. So this is how we set up. So depending on the problem, we do set up some structure around it. There's a question from the audience also around the same, which is pretty much the answer that I was giving. That if there are multiple matrices and with conflicting directions or orthogonal directions, how do you take decisions? So this is how you do. And there's one more angle which comes into picture, which is resources. So for example, again an example. Now suppose you want to correct your unit economics, right? And you want to say that we want to increase our revenue or decrease the cost per order by so and so. Now you will have to put up some resources for it. You need your data scientists, your engineers. Now we also do a resource bifurcation, saying if you give us 10 engineers, we promise you 5 rupees. If you give us 20 engineers, we might promise you say 8 rupees. Now you have to take a call. What do you want to do? So again, with all these matrices, is also a third, I would say, access to this question, which is the resources itself. So combined, we present like a matrices of choices, and then we all sit together and decide which is the block that we want to pick and move ahead in the. It's like a Rubik's Cube kind of thing.
And adding to
Understood.
this point,
Yeah.
the number of, as companies growing, right? So the number of metrics increases, that number of dimensions in the metrics also increases.
Crazy. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It depends on the problem. Then you have to narrow it down and figure out what you want to do for this specific problem.
Right. And Anjan, what do you think? How does, one thing that is also a sort of curiosity angle here is that, how does marketing and growth complement to the matrices that you're owning, right? And you're driving. And do you all rely on a common analytics tool as well to monitor some of these metrics across functions, right? So how do they complement you, and how do you enable them to do more justice to achieving those KPIs?
Get a question. So I think in startups, especially startups that are eyeing hyper growth, the biggest thing is feedback loops. I would say it's impossible for every team to look at every metric all the time. Of course, you have automated systems, you'll have anomaly detection systems that will do their job. But at the end of the day, who's the consumer of those analytics outputs is very important. So what we'll end up doing is, as I said, when we never split our metrics in a way that the lead indicators are owned by two teams. Let me give you a simple example. For example, uh, marketing is really looking at lower cost installs. At the same time, they are optimizing for higher number of organic registrations. Then obviously your cost per install will come down, and that's what they're looking at, right? Now that's a lead indicator. That is purely led by marketing. And then there is then when it comes to product, there is a lead indicator such as day one retention on the app or day two retention on the app, very early in the user's life cycle, right? Now these are lead indicators. These are held by specific teams. Now where marketing and product shake hands are on the lag indicators, such as I said, marketing would want to know how long it's going to take to, if they've spent a crore of money today, then when do they get back that crore, right? And that is a combination of what marketing did in terms of organic registrations, the CPIs that the installs came in with. From product, it will be retention, your conversion rates, what's your day one conversion rate, day two conversion rates, etc. The thing is that there is going to be a very detailed matrix where there are going to be a bunch of lead indicators that lead to a lag indicator, such as an NPS or a revenue figure or payback. All these things are all lag indicators. But for each one of those cells, when you look at a matrix, each one of those cells where there's a lead indicator, that will have a single team owning it or a single owner within a team. I think that kind of reduces friction also. There's clear accountability, and there's enough trust that the other person is doing their job. If they're not, obviously it will come out in the reviews. But in terms of but one place where I feel that friction happens the most between product and marketing in general would be at the time of prioritization and ideation. But then once we get into execution as well as attacking a metric, I think that's where startups really trump larger organizations because they work as a family, which is what the common case is. And execution is never the problem. And then if all goes well, then your KPIs would have moved. So that's how it works at Healthify, at least.
That's one of the common things we end up hearing a lot, that there is no bandwidth to integrate a marketing tool or a analytics tool, right? So I think that's something that I've very frequently heard as well. So Lijo, do you have any thoughts on how does these teams complement your functions, and how do you rely on some of these tools to drive consistency between teams in terms of monitoring the metrics?
Yes. So, so as I said, we define outcome metrics initially. So we have been running ads during IPL with Shah Rukh Khan for Byju's classes. Uh, so, uh, so, so we had certain conversion percentage that has been defined on how many people are converting from after coming to the site, etc. So the form that you see in the Byju's homepage, it has gone through a lot of testing and experiments over the last 3 months, and marketing and product has been working very closely together, and we have increased the conversion percentage on that by around 28 to 30%. So I'm sure that if somebody had filled in that form like a long time back, if they come now, they wouldn't see the notification, the differences. But that is actually an example or an instance of how marketing and product work together and work towards an outcome metrics, which finally adds revenue to the company, or which helps us in acquiring more users. So if you define your outcome metrics very clearly, and if you set the expectation very clearly with the leadership, then it becomes much more easier. But as Shivangi said earlier, it's also important to ensure that you are optimizing not for one metric without defining the constraints around that metric. So it is very easy to say, for example, if you're looking for installs, like what we used to do when we were in a previous company, it's very easy to get low cost installs, but they may not be the users who will finally end up ordering and or adding to your bottom line or top line. So it's essential that in addition to having a metric like a North Star metric, you define constraints around it as well, so that you can take it forward from there. So in Byju's engineering, marketing, product, everybody works collaboratively for some of these outcome metrics. And as long as the outcome metrics goes on increasing, it is fine. But sometimes it doesn't work well. Then we learn something from failure, and we never tend to do that mistake again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Failure to a stepping stone to a success, right? So Shivangi, what are your thoughts on, what trends do you forecast for a product-led growth, next year? Like, what are the common trends that you foresee?
I think we are as a company betting really, really big on product-led growth, because what has happened with generally food delivery and most of the other e-com players is that TAM is sort of hitting, unless generally the economy improves with the paying capacity of the Indian consumer, right? We know that they are like, no wonder is going to happen in the next 5-6 years. Suddenly people are not going to become rich. We have to work with what we have now. So we are thinking of growth in terms of investing more in terms of growth loops, so core loops of growth, improving our core experience, figuring out how do we have some kind of unfinished business with them, also creating some meta loops. So Android users in Bangalore would not see a game which comes in Swiggy as soon as you finish ordering. So if you play that game, it gives you a coupon which lasts say next 2-3 days for you to order, or a snacks time, or some kind of gamified experience. So this is just one small example. So a lot of meta loops getting formed, so that the customer has some unfinished business with the platform to keep coming back. Also investing a lot more in these kind of growth loops and meta loops, so that we are not relying just on usual expansion of the user base to increase more orders. We're also not relying on how do we actually play on the psychology of our existing users, segment them very, very well, so that we're able to extract the most juice that we can. So that's what growth looks like. So that's a core growth. And I think there's a question also on how do we conceive new initiatives at Swiggy. So like I said, right, growth comes in two forms for us. One is core, that is your food orders increase, and the other is more. When I say more, now we have to identify that what new bets are we going to take as a company. So there are two ways to look at it. One, you look at it internally, that okay, so I have a good logistics base. What more can I do with a delivery fleet which has gotten like a delivery under 30 minutes, right? What are the other ideas that are out there? Some might be too far-fetched, some might be easy to do, some might not be a priority right now. So then you figure out what all ideas are there, and then you pick one. And the other one is what is a complementary idea which might not be very obvious for Swiggy to do, but actually will help my core business. So this core combined with this more, how do we actually increase the size of the pie for us? Now, one of the vision that we have as a company have is to become the kings of convenience. So that's when we started. So Swiggy is actually a company which wants to provide more and more convenience to the urban user. So that's where we keep deriving our ideas from. So this is how it all comes together. Now that's where an idea comes. Then you have to think of the loops and how it's all connected. Like I don't know if many of you might have used Instamart. So what has happened with Instamart, that people who are using Instamart now, which is our instant grocery delivery services, are now also ordering more food with us. So these kind of combined network effects also kick in. So there are a lot of moving parts. So all these things combined help us in taking some decisions. So yeah, 2021 is very interesting because a lot of more things going to happen, because now that COVID, so we did see a lot of fallen orders during the whole lockdown phase, but it has came back with a bang. We are now back on track with our, and we are again, chasing growth 2021. So excited for the growth in core streams as well as launching a few more new initiatives this year.
Thank you, Shivangi. Nikhil, I think, mobility has been a roller coaster ride this year, right? Given the entire pandemic situation. So, what are some of the common trends that you have forecasted for product-like growth in 2020 itself?
Sure. So there are two ways that we are seeing it. One, safety has become a norm per se. At the same time, there are new use cases which are being cropped up. So that led to one of the new initiatives that Rapido started recently. We are calling it as Rapido Local, where you can send, or where you can send a captain anywhere and ask him to get anything. So that is something which we started. At the same time, if you see, right, so pandemic taught most of the startups how to think profitability. How do you work on your customers? How do you target your high value customers? How do you increase, or how do you get more new customers who can be your high value customers? So that is something which will be across the startups, not just startups, even if you see big MNCs and all, right? So everyone is striving for profitability right now, or increasing their top line amount that they're getting from the users that they're using. So everywhere, right? So everywhere the optimizations will kick in everywhere. The number of amount of discounts that you're giving to users. Do you need any handholding team? Right now, most of the companies have training teams on the ground which trains their drivers. So do we really need them? So that is something which we changed in COVID. Right now, we have a zero team who calls the captains to onboard. So even for training, we have zero team members, zero team who calls the captains right now to train them. So all the companies will thrive to understand what can be optimized and what product can add, not just in adding new customers, but also how do we optimize more for profitability? Where do we really need external parties, internal team members like agents, callers? All these things will go away for sure. So maybe we are already seeing the trend. There are new startups which are coming into the ecosystem where they are saying that we'll manage everything, automate it for you. You just give us the money and we'll acquire you drivers or customers at 50 rupees, and we will get you everything for you. So there are so many startups which are coming into the ecosystem. Maybe companies like MoEngage, there is a company called Vahan, who are helping us with low cost acquisition, and good acquisition is happening for us with them. So main trends that I see is profitability with acquiring new customers in the segment who can add more value to you.
Got it. Anjan, I think from you, I want to know what are going to be those key differentiators for Healthify Me to stand out in 2021.
I think from a health and wellness perspective, there are two things, right? So first is how has the consumer sentiment towards health and wellness changed over the last few months? Second is how is the economy doing? Actually, these are two things that really dictate how Healthify Me is going to grow in the next few months or the next few years. So one of the things that we've noticed is that people are getting a lot more health conscious over the period of COVID, as well as we're guessing that after COVID, we will see that it will stabilize at a new normal, right? From search trends to everything, we can obviously break it down to see how people have become more health conscious, which is good for humanity in general, which is great. And one of the things that we noticed was it was just not that obviously helped us boom as a business, because of the fact that we are the largest player in India, we are the largest player in Malaysia. Obviously, it helped us grow a lot. But at the same time, economy comes into play only because of the fact that COVID has had a pretty bad effect on economy, as even Shivangi pointed out. The fact that users are not going to accumulate as much wealth, which means that a non-essential service such as health and wellness, while supposed to be essential in all our minds, it is a non-essential service at the end of the day. We can't kid ourselves about that, which means that people need to really think before they take money out of the wallet. So there are two ways this will go forward. One is, we always prepare for these two situations. First is, if all goes well, the vaccine comes out in the next 6 months, the economy improves, jobs are back, then it's a very different play. I mean, what's going to happen then, in our opinion, is product is going to be okay. I think marketing is going to be the biggest struggle. The big guns will start firing. The ones where you're really looking at, right, talking about the Flipkarts, the Swiggies of the world. Of course, there is a lot more they can do when the economy is growing, right?
Yeah.
Where smaller startups may have the problem of acquisition at that point in time. Obviously, you're vying for the same kind of users. And the second case is basically where the economy, unfortunately, touch wood, it's not going too badly. But then if it goes down and people end up losing more jobs, etc., then health is going to further disappear into the background.
Yeah.
Then there has to be more and more affordable solutions, which is what we doubled down on even during COVID. And our AI solutions have ended up becoming more scalable, more affordable to the general audience, because not everyone can afford a nutritionist or a fitness trainer. So I think what will happen is that in scenario two, what we believe is that it's going to land up going down the line of lower cost plans, probably a small token size of maybe about a ticket size of maybe about $99, $100 is what we have to come down to, so that we can cater to a larger audience across India and make healthcare more affordable to India. So that's the plan that we are also going down the path of. Whether the economy goes in the direction or not is not the question. It's actually how we are prepared for it. But the first one where the big guns will fire is, we believe that partnerships are most important. In fact, our largest partnership is with Swiggy, and we do a lot of work with Swiggy, in terms of making user in general health conscious. So I think that's going to be the path forward for Healthify if the economy booms and we have problems with marketing in general. So I think partnerships will play a big role. But before I sign off, thank you for the Swiggy game in Bangalore, Shivangi, because we've been in office and we've been ordering in food every day, and I think I've saved at least a couple of $1,000 in the last 1 week itself. So
Yeah, it's good to hear.
Before we move on to questions, I think Lijo, from you as well, it would be interesting to know that the entire edtech space has completely shifted its faces from COVID to maybe a futuristic non-COVID world in 2021, right? So there are multiple apps you have launched in the process. So what is going to be your key differentiator next year based on today's learning?
Yeah, so during COVID, the first part I spent at Paytm. There I saw the investments being at the highest ever metric that I ever seen in the last 3 years. Then I shifted out to Byju's. So I saw that I believe that I had seen enough growth in Paytm, in hockey sticks in various angles. But when I came to Byju's, what I saw was perpendicular. So perpendicular in the sense that we have reached a scale to such a large extent that the problems that we are working on is very different from the problems that we had 3 months back when I joined the company. So we are working. So as they say, in the middle of difficulty lies the opportunity. So we are working on some very interesting products where the insights came because of the scale that we had in COVID, and we are planning to launch some of these products globally over in 2021. So the product, so primarily, as Shivangi told earlier, primarily our primary growth loop till now has been a sales channel, where it's a sales loop that happens where people go feet on street and meet the parents. So hopefully some of these products will move towards a product-led growth. And as such, if you look at product-led growth, the supply of good product managers is very less when compared to the demand for good growth product managers. So I think all of us are going to be having a good time fighting for the talent which is out there. And product-led growth is what is going to drive a lot of these companies, a lot of us, and a lot of the other companies in the ecosystem also in future, because people are now not only looking at top line and growth, but also at the bottom line and how soon you will become profitable.
Awesome. So we'll just pick, in the interest of time, one or two questions from the panel. Are there any questions that you guys would like to personally pick?
There's this question for the follow-up question. How do you define personas like discount hunters?
Yes.
So, Rochak, so what we do is we have some markers, like whenever you're purchasing, right? We have some markers like one very important marker, which defines most of our strategy in pricing and promotion is willingness to pay. So we constantly check how much are you willing to pay for delivery, how much are you willing to pay, like generally what kind of restaurants you order from. So suppose if somebody is ordering from a very truffles or Behruz biryani where the items itself are like nothing less than 200, right? And the cart is going to 600. That person would not mind paying a 40 rupees or 50 rupees delivery fee versus a person who's choosing and going to a restaurant or ordering like a 90 rupee meal. Now, for that person, 40 rupees is a lot of delivery fee. So these kind of markers are there. So one angle is willingness to pay, and the other pointer is discount affinity. That will you not order if I don't give you a discount? So there are a bunch of people who will not place an order till they find a discount. They spend like 30 minutes scouting through the platform for discounts. They also check up other apps. So given all these behavior, right, we come up with scores like what kind of profiling is it, a P1 customer, P2 customer, what's the capacity to pay for the customer. We also look at whether or not did they order when the discount was this much, that much. So all these vectors combined, we come up with a, again, like some kind of segmentation, and then we decide that which are the discount hunters, which are not. And sometimes like Anjan was saying, right, this is the year which UE became like important for many people. So we deliberately then make a strategy saying, okay, so what, we lose 10% orders from discount hunters, so be it, because these guys were never anyways loyal to the platform. And then you say, okay, maybe I'll focus more on giving more benefits to my P1 users, maybe, and because their lifetime value with us is more and their value to the platform is more. So these are the things that you take into consideration by deciding if you want to save UE, you have to cut down discounts. So we don't want to cut away all the discounts, otherwise the platform will degrow. So then you cut down discounts in segments. Okay, these are segments we're okay to lose, so let's cut down their discounts. Something like that. Yeah.
Got it. That sort of answers one of the other questions as well, about, how do you more realistically segment your users?
Yeah, so the more markers you have,
Yeah.
the better you'll be able to segment. And also, like, this is the hard part of it, but the soft part of it is also actually talking to the users. So creating segments is an art. You have to balance it, actually understanding the customer and then looking at data and marrying the two.
Awesome. Just one last question, Lijo, Nikhil, Anjan, if you guys want to pick one.
I think I'll just touch upon segmentation. I think so. There are two types of apps, right? One are the utility apps, and the ones where you are very transactional, where you would go and purchase something almost every day or once in a while, and then there are apps that are longer term freemium apps. So for those who are listening in and who are looking at freemium apps, I think even obviously Byju's and Healthify falls under the same category over there, where we are proper freemium apps. I think one thing that is important that we have learned is getting enough information so that you can personalize just enough within the first, I don't know, half an hour of a user's journey or first 15 minutes of a user's journey. The journey actually starts for us even before the user signs up. If you actually had to install the Healthify app right now, even before sign up, we would ask you why you're coming in, right? So that we have enough of a sense of what you want to do in the app. And so almost everything is personalized after that. So that's very important for our segmentation engines. By the time a user finishes onboarding, we've seen that we can split any user between about 56 to 60 segments. So we know exactly how each segment is going to perform. So I think that's very important. The more the markers that we have, as Shivani said, it's important. So what we do, at least in the freemium apps, is make sure that we have enough markers before we start giving back value. Because if you don't have those markers, it's impossible to give back value. And then we'll end up going and collecting more about the user over the journey. And the upper limit is about 250, 260 different variables across which we can actually segment users, understand what works for us. And that feeds back into marketing because they will get users who are similar to the best users that we have. So that's the way that engine works for us. So that's just a sense of how it works in premium apps.
Thanks, Anjan. Thanks, everyone, Shivangi, Lijo, Nikhil, Anjan, for being such an amazing panel today. With this, I'll wrap up the session. Next session we have is on, understanding how do you leverage user insights and analytics to maximize engagement. This is for the audience, so stay tuned. And meanwhile, thank you so much, guys, for joining.